bet you weren't expecting to see this face here. I was going to do an Irish accent, but to be honest with you, there's been enough discourse about Irish accents in Star Trek over the last month or so I decided against it. There's just not worth it. Let's not go there. We've joked about this in the last few weeks, but what are the chances that when Mr. Sean Ferrick decides to go gallivanting on the Star Trek cruise, crucial news drops in the Star Trek universe? But it's fine. Some of us are dedicated to the Trek culture cause, so we'll take this one for you, Sean. So joining me today is someone whose face you haven't seen on Trek Culture, but you may recognise from other places. Stephen, thank you so much for taking one for the team and joining me here.
Howdy, howdy. I am very happy to be here. And I was a bit sad about sitting out the Star Trek cruise this year. I've gone on the cruise a few times, but I guess there were plenty of opportunities to have some fun Trek engagement on land. So here I am talking about this big, important, really surprising Star Trek news instead of having fun with Sean.
Yeah, see, you hear that here. You hear that here. We're having more fun on land. We don't need to be on a cruise. That's what we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better. Anyway, big news, big news. So I'm sure many of you will have seen over the last couple of days, but William Shatner may well be returning to Star Trek. So during a panel at Fan Expo Vancouver last week, he revealed that he'd actually been in contact with a writer from one of the currently in development Star Trek series about a potential return to the franchise. So I'm going to find the exact quote so that I don't get it wrong. So in response to this, he said, "I have been asked to come back as Kirk so many times. If Kirk is going to come back, it has to mean something. It has to be the show. But I was so impressed by this writer, so I said, let's talk after I'm done in Vancouver. So I'm awaiting a pitch to make it the show. It should come on Monday or Tuesday." How exciting is that?
Yeah, I did not have that on my 2025 bingo card that this week William Shatner would be receiving pitches for a possible return to Star Trek.
Especially because, I mean, we don't know in what capacity this may or may not be, this return, but he's been famously against returning in any sort of cameo role. The last time we saw him was Star Trek Generations, 1994. That's 30 years ago. So as you say, this is definitely something that's kind of come out of nowhere. What suddenly changed your mind there, Mr. Shatner? What's going on?
And I'm curious, there have been in recent years, well, I say recent years, I guess it was 20 years ago at this point, but at the end of Star Trek Enterprise, there was an idea for bringing Shatner into that show that would have used Mirror Universe Kirk. And I'm wondering if it might be something similar to that. There's so many weird questions to ask because William Shatner, obviously, he looks 30 years older than he did the last time we saw him. And his character died in that movie. And if, they try to use the Nexus to bring him back, they could do that, but they would probably have to do the de-aging. But we've seen in the recent OTOY video that they did that technology does exist. You can recreate the 1994 William Shatner look for Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question has to be asked for the OTOY thing. It was, in comparison to a whole series, not very long. So in terms of using that technology, right, it would take a lot longer to create a series. But I think there are two major questions to be asked with this revelation. One, how could he return? And two, what has sparked this change in attitude in Shatner compared to the attitude he's had before and been quite clear about in the past? But you just touched upon it there, I guess, in terms of the how. If we look at, he specifically mentioned a writer of an in-development Star Trek series. So if we look at what's in development at the moment, we've got Starfleet Academy, we've got Strange New Worlds, and of course we do have a new comedy series that Tawny Newsome is creating, so that's another option there as well. The idea of seeing William Shatner in a Star Trek comedy show just intrigues me quite a lot.
Although that would be something new and different that hasn't been pitched to him before, so that might be what is changing things. Why he's changing his tune now. It's like, oh, you're going to do something funny? Well, I like that. I think that's hilarious. I mean, I don't know. I'm
Mm.
just speculating, but that is possible.
That's definitely probably the lowest on my expectations of what it's going to be, but probably the highest on my hopes of what it will be. But there are a few ways that it obviously could happen. Obviously, we did see in Picard season 3 that by the time of the events of that season, Kirk's body was on ice, let's say, at
Hmm.
Daystrom Station. And the project it was part of was Project Phoenix, which quite literally could mean that it's a project where they're working on reviving Kirk. So I guess if we want to look at Starfleet Academy, could it be that by the time we get to when Starfleet Academy is set, they've developed the technology in order to revive Kirk, and he's there as a, I don't know, as a professor or
There has been a lot of speculation that Starfleet Academy might be a really good vehicle to return a lot of these familiar faces, though. If the Academy has holograms of some of the Starfleet legends over the centuries, that would make perfect sense to drop in anyone, including Shatner, as a de-aged Captain Kirk.
Yeah. Again, we then have to look at the de-aging. I think the clever thing they did there was bringing the EMH because he's the one character where they can go, you know what, it doesn't matter what he looks like because he can have age and it's a choice that he's made for himself. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, in terms of having those holograms of those characters, that would definitely be interesting. The other option we've obviously got is Strange New Worlds. I think in my mind, this is the one that makes the most sense. But I do struggle to see how it could be anything other than a one-off or a cameo appearance in Strange New Worlds because we already have Paul Wesley playing a version of Kirk in those stories. I think my pitch for this would be some sort of space-induced fever dream where we have Wesley's Kirk coming face to face with a future version of himself. I don't know. This is my pitch for how this could work.
Well, Shatner does know Paul Wesley. They seem to like each other. So
Mm.
that could also be what maybe is enticing him to come back and do it.
And I guess if it's a weird fever dream, then that's an easy way to explain why Shatner might look older. Like, if it's some sort of weird hallucination, then it's like, look, I look older, but that's okay because I'm in your mind. This is just what you think your future self is going to look like.
But Strange New Worlds is the very ambitious show, and they claim, every season they say we're going to be even more bonkers and take more big swings, as they like to say. That's the term they use, is big swings every year. So that that could be something that they're looking to do in season 4 that will start shooting soon. But I also think the Academy is very likely, as season 2 is going to start shooting later this year.
Hmm. I mean, I guess another thing we could look at. The one issue we have at the moment is that of all these shows, I mean, the comedy we know very little about at this point, but the time frames of all the current shows that are in development don't really make sense or fit with us having an aged version of Kirk in them. But, I mean, this is Star Trek, so that kind of doesn't really matter. There's time travel, there's alternate realities, there's a way that we can explain it. But I do wonder as well if there's something to be, you mentioned again earlier the mirror universe versions. I wonder if, Prime Kirk died in Generations, but who's to say that Mirror Kirk isn't still thriving? So if we had a mirror version of Kirk, again, he didn't die, so he continued to age. So if we fit it somewhere where it makes sense for Kirk to be in his 90s, then that could be an interesting aspect as well.
So that's what it's going to be. It's going to be Mirror Universe Kirk comes to the Prime Universe to go on vacation at Tawny Newsom's resort planet in her show that's set outside the Federation. And that's why he's going to look so old, but also still be appropriate to be played by Shatner.
It's his retirement plan.
Yeah, that's what happened to Mirror Universe Kirk. He went and retired at Tawny Newsom's resort planet.
Yeah, there you go. We need say no more because we've cracked the case right there. That is how we're gonna have Kirk returning.
If only we knew which writer he talked to. If he said, "Oh, I talked to Tawny Newsome," or maybe if he said, like, "I talked to Terry Metalis," and maybe this is some other attempt at trying to to get a Star Trek Legacy idea or something. They're going to resurrect that body on ice in Picard season 3 or something. But we don't know who he was talking to, if it was one of the Strange New Worlds people or who. So
Yeah,
it could
that.
be anything.
Yeah. And then I guess, as I said, that the other question that kind of arises from this is the why the change of heart in terms of returning. So back in 2024, last year, he told The Hollywood Reporter, and I quote, "If they wrote something that wasn't a stunt that involved Kirk, and it was something that was genuinely added to the lore of Star Trek, I would definitely consider it." Now, this is not a new kind of opinion from Star Trek Legacy actors. I know that other actors have a similar view on this. I mean, Kate Mulgrew, for example, has been very clear on the fact that I think they're very connected to their characters. They feel that they have to do a service to their characters. And so, yes, they can return, but it can't just be a gimmick. It needs to have meaning. But based on that kind of mindset that he's had, it kind of suggests that what we should actually be expecting is the announcement of Star Trek Kirk coming, because it doesn't seem that there's any other way that he's going to return. You know, if he's very clear that it's not going to be a cameo, I fail to see how he can fit within one of the existing shows without it just being a small role.
Right. Or I mean, that's kind of like Strange New Worlds model, is they would just do single episode stories anyways. But I mean, he could still have a big important role maybe that he thought was worthy of his return within, a single episode could be focused on a guest star. But, if they were going to do some type of Star Trek Kirk series or something that is, totally dedicated to him, that also is interesting, because it's like, dude, you're in your 90s. Like, how much, work do you want? Are you going to commit to? Are you going to be like Patrick Stewart and commit to a 3-season show? That seems like a stretch. Also,
I was just going to say, Patrick Stewart was very clear, and he's younger than Shatner, that he was only doing 3 seasons. Like, come on, you're just giving yourself quite a bit of work to do here. But obviously, there is legacy, as you did mention. Obviously, he was very specific in mentioning it was an in-development Star Trek series writer. So I don't think we're getting an announcement of Legacy soon, and this is the big surprise. But I could see Shatner being a big part of a Legacy series going forward, and I could see him being sold on the idea of a show that's about the Legacy characters. I feel like of all of the kind of options, that seems like the kind of pitch that he would be more in favor of than just appearing as a figment of Paul Wesley's imagination.
Yeah, and the only reason why I bring that up is because I know that there have been conversations with some of the professionals who worked on Picard, like Terry Matalas and others. Jerry Ryan said recently that people had talked to her about possibly doing another show that was going to be different from Terry Matalas's idea, but she said that at a convention recently. Yeah, but I guess those wouldn't be things that are currently in development. The only things in development that we know of are Academy, Strange New Worlds, and this Tawny Newsome Resort show.
Unless William Shatner has just accidentally revealed to the entire Star Trek fandom that there is, in fact, another Star Trek show in development that hasn't been announced yet.
I mean, anything's possible. There could be, conceptual things floating around that we just have never heard of.
Yeah. I also wonder, I mean, I said earlier about my question of why has he changed his mind on this? And I do wonder if the OTOY unification short film, shall we call it, I'm wondering if the success of that and the positive response to that has perhaps sparked a change in his attitude. Seeing the response from the audience at seeing his version of the character, I mean, obviously it wasn't him actually physically there, but he was involved to a degree with the creation of that.
Right.
And I wonder if now that and I mean, obviously you mentioned his age as well, if he's kind of got to the point in his life where he's like, there will be no other opportunity for me to do this. And I've seen the response from the audience and the desire from the audience to see this character again. And perhaps he's had such a kind of positive response from that he's gone, maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all.
That is a great point because that is, something recent that we do know he was involved with. He was credited in that, and they did all of that stuff with his permission. So that might have turned him around.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, I just can't really think, why would you be so set in your ways and in your mindset about not returning and having so many kind of prerequisites about what it would take for him to return? For him suddenly to kind of go, well, I've been talking to one of the current writers, and I do think that they've got something good going on here, so maybe we'll talk now. It just seems like something must have happened to spark that change in mindset. And I feel like the unification, or the response to it at least, I mean, I don't think that was an expected response. I don't think they made it thinking no one's going to watch this, but I think the response that did come from it was much larger than perhaps they anticipated.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing that occurs to me is that Shatner spends a lot of time, on the convention circuit going to cons, like he was at this last weekend when he made this announcement. He's also seen a lot of these, TNG and Voyager actors come back in these new shows. So maybe he's like, oh, I don't want to miss out on all the fun. I see all of you guys show up on Picard and Prodigy and stuff, and I want to get a piece of the action myself.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, he's not a shy man.
Bringing up Picard, though, there were deliberate efforts in that show to make season 3 work. They had to get that entire TNG cast back together, and you can tell by watching it, Gates McFadden wanted a really big part, Marina Sirtis wanted a really small part. You can kind of see what LeVar Burton wanted to work with his daughter, but they were able to find the ways to, give these actors what they wanted and still make the story that they wanted to tell. So I think it is, very possible. It's exciting that we're even having this conversation, because there was a time when I thought we would never see more of a lot of these legacy characters. There was a time where I never thought we would see more of the TNG cast. There was a time where I never thought we would see more Kirk. But we do live in an age of a lot of Star Trek possibilities. So I think this is very exciting. It is very possible that we will get Shatner as Kirk in Star Trek again.
Definitely. And I think, obviously, it's so important that the show keeps progressing forward and we do get these new shows with these new characters. But it also has such a dedicated fan base that it's important to still hark back to those characters that made the show what it is. So, for example, I actually saw quite recently a comment that Bob Picardo had made about his role in Starfleet Academy and how he's basically there to bridge the gap between the old and new Trek. And I think that's something really important just in general, that while the show, it should progress and should move forward, that we still have some kind of remnants of these legacy characters to keep everybody happy and engaged with the show. Otherwise, people kind of lose that interest, which is not to say that you shouldn't give the new shows a chance with the new characters, because where would we be if nobody had given The Next Generation a chance, or Deep Space Nine, or Voyager? I mean, it's the nature of Star Trek. But to have someone like William Shatner return in any form would certainly work in the favor of the Star Trek world, and for Paramount, I would say.
Absolutely.
So I guess we can only cross our fingers, hope for the best, and wait and see. It is currently Tuesday, so in theory, he should already have this pitch in his inbox from said writer, said mystery in development Star Trek series writer. So perhaps we may hear something in the near future, possibly in the further future. And that is if he looks at the script and goes, yes, this is a good idea, and doesn't become a diva and go, actually, I've changed my mind. Just got everybody's hopes up, and now I've changed my mind.
Oh, no. Yeah, I hope he's not just trolling all of us, just, getting us all excited and then be like, actually, no.
But it certainly seems like more of a possibility than ever before that we may well be getting a Star Trek Kirk in the future. Maybe they can come up with a better name than that, but some sort of William Shatner Kirk starring new show in the Star Trek universe, which certainly would be something else, and I'm very excited for it. So let us know in the comments down below your theories about how William Shatner's Kirk could return to the Star Trek universe, taking into account that he doesn't want a cameo, people. Okay, I'm interested to see what you all think. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you so much for putting up with us not being Sean for the day. Let's all wish him well on his travels on the Star Trek cruise.
And if you're currently on the Star Trek cruise with Sean, Tawny Newsome is also on board. Ask her if she's the writer that was talking to William Shatner.
Absolutely. Let's find all the details. Let's be the first to get that scoop. Look after yourselves, as Sean would say, live long and prosper, and thank you for joining us.